Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Delighted to see the numbers continuing to rise on the chat panel as we kick off. But because we have only an hour, I do want to be prompt and kick off straight away. So as I said, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to what promises to be probably the most interesting conversation you're going to hear this year. This event is in aid of MicroLoan Foundation. That's a women's empowerment and poverty alleviation charity that works in the sub-Saharan Africa. MicroLoan provides small loans and business training for women so they can start a business and take their first steps out of poverty. Our topic today is putting sustainability and gender equality at the forefront of business. And we'll hear how organisations represented here today are tackling these issues. You'll hear too how organisations are having an impact on ending poverty, gender equality, creating decent work and economic growth and climate action, 4 of the UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So thank you all for being here. I know it's nearly the end of the day, 4 in the UK and 5 in Europe, much earlier in the US, but I'm going to kick off with a video featuring MicroLoan's ambassador, Deirdre Meaden, who will tell you more about the charity. So Matt, if you could run the video, please, that'd be great.
I'm Deborah Meaden, and I've spent my life in business. One thing I've learned is that even the best ideas often need a helping hand to succeed. I've come to Malawi in Central Africa to find out how women like these market traders can use a modest cash injection to generate a stable income that will lift them and their families out of desperate hand-to-mouth poverty.
The odds are really stacked against these women. With the majority of the population earning less than £1 a day, the chance of getting a loan to start a business is pretty much impossible. But there is an organisation that is changing this. It's called the MicroLoan Foundation.
I want to show you how this charity is helping women in Africa to turn their lives around by providing small loans and practical business training. And I hope that over the next few minutes I can convince you to do what you can to help too. Enela Banda's family struggled even for the basics.
Simakhandi tozovuta magolo anga tesine timangoyuzingira ulimi paipo bwe zimasowa kwambiri dai ndalama ndizo zimavuta kuti ife tana asitithandiza. Malagaka kuti nitaphuza ntakhala ngati inenso maphunzitsa so ngati ana amene ali kumudzi kutengaponso ngati mbali. Kwa ineyo sidanivuta kamba ka fees kwa makolo anga anali so fees. Taimeneyo yona uzamunanga ponnalira.
And history looked like repeating itself when Enela's children began to miss school because she couldn't afford books or uniforms. Enela's story is frustratingly commonplace. Loads of ambitions and good intentions and no means of unleashing them. But for Enela and thousands of other women, MicroLoan offers a way forward.
It's early days for Enela's business, but I want to see if it's starting to make a difference to her life. So you've got the money, you've got a business, and what difference has that made to your life?
Moyo wanga uli bwino tsopano lokati aipa khomo alupezeka ndithu. Ana salugona ni njala chakudya chikupezeka sawa ni malima fodya ni malima chimanga ni malima. Siku ya ana tsopano nono tikusintha monga nkhani kwa makoba baba ini magulira athu paipa nopa. Nenzo ndiye nimakwanitsadi kusamala banja langa.
Many of the women that MicroLoan lend to have no previous experience of managing money, so the charity provide regular training for their borrowers. Many people in Malawi are illiterate, but MicroLoan believe that shouldn't hold them back from learning the fundamentals of business. How do you teach people who can't read and write?
Normally we sing, because when we sing, they do remember.
Everybody sings, everybody dances, so it's the language that
and
they understand.
Easy. Yeah, it's easy.
Each year, MicroLoan lends to over 35,000 women, but they want to help so many more. I know business. I know this approach works. Please give what you can.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely amazing. So I'm introducing myself now. So my name is Terri Moloney. I'm Senior Director of Employee Success within Salesforce, and I'm thrilled to be here today with an amazing lineup of speakers. I couldn't do justice to the amazing work these individuals and their organizations have done and continue to do so. So I'm going to take the easy way out, and I'm going to ask each of them to do their own introductions. And I'll start with our host today, Medha Wilson, who is CEO of MicroLoan. Medha.
Thank you, Terri. And thank you all for being a part of this event today. It's so lovely to have so many of you attend. A quick introduction about myself. I'm Medha Wilson, CEO of MicroLoan Foundation. I joined MicroLoan Foundation in early 2018, having spent close to a decade in financial inclusion in both Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. As you've heard from Terri's introduction and also from the video that you've just seen, MicroLoan Foundation is a poverty alleviation and women's empowerment organization working in Sub-Saharan Africa. And we carry out our work through 3 of our established subsidiaries that are regulated financial institutions in Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. As CEO, my role is to develop the overall strategy of the group. And I also have very close oversight of our operations through my role as a board member in each of our subsidiaries. MicroLoan's vision is for all those living in poverty to have the opportunity to develop better lives for themselves and for their families. And our mission is to provide the tools and skills necessary to enable some of the poorest women in Sub-Saharan Africa work themselves out of poverty. The video that you just saw had a statistic of the number of women that we've helped that's slightly dated because it was filmed in 2015. So I'm just going to give you an update on those figures. As of 2019, in 2019 alone, we've served over 82,000 women start their journeys out of poverty. And since inception, we've helped close to 243,000 women. That translates to roughly just under 1 million lives that we've positively impacted through our work. So thank you once again, and I look forward to a great discussion today.
Thank you, Medha. Really happy to hear from you and so inspired by both the video and even the increase in numbers that you've shared now. Next, I'd like to go over to Mamadou Biteye. Mamadou is Vice President of Social Impact for the Central European, Middle East and Africa region at Visa. As well as that, though, he's an advisor to the African Women Leadership Fund and the World Bank, the World Economic Forum and the African Leadership Network. Mamadou, I don't know where you get time to do any work with all of that, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself. Mamadou, are you on mute? Are you there?
Yes, thank you, Terri. And I am very, very to you and to the MicroLoan Foundation for organizing this. I'm pleased and honored to represent Visa here. So you've spoke about my background. I would just add that I joined Visa a year ago, coming from mainly philanthropy and not-for-profit sector in Africa and across the world. So for Visa, really the largest payment network with over 3.5 billion cards out there and over 65 million merchants, it's really important to actually act as a force for good and contribute to inclusive economic growth. And that's really the focus of our sustainability. And this is really focused also on women, economic empowerment through their entrepreneurship. So we'll talk more about it later. Thank you.
Super, thank you. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Gill Thorpe. Gill is our award-winning entrepreneur and CEO and founder of the sourcing team. Gill, hello.
Hi, Terri, thank you. Yeah, so, okay, so I founded a company called the Sourcing Team in 1996, and we really focused on ethical sourcing of marketing materials that we work with for corporations and charities. And as the business developed, we became more and more involved in sustainability, and we're very focused on not just the products that we produce, the materials they're made of, but the people who are producing those items, making sure that they are treated fairly because a lot of these producers are women and often not looked after as well as they should be. In 2015, I joined an organisation called We Connect, which is supporting diversity spend, with gender diversity spend, and loved it. I thought it was incredible. And so I joined and set up what we call the WeBe Council, which is helping other women-owned businesses to grow and develop and learn and sharing insights. And so when I met the team from MicroLoan, it was just, I have to be involved with this because it just fits so beautifully with the work I've been doing with other female organisations. And yeah, just wanted to be part of supporting MicroLoan for the long term. So that's me.
Absolutely, thank you. And finally, for our final speaker, I'd like to welcome to the panel today Tessa Clarke, who's co-founder of OLIO. And Tessa, you might tell us about yourself and your organization, because I certainly wasn't familiar with it until I met you and started to research it.
Hi everybody. So OLIO is the world's first neighbour-to-neighbour food sharing app. We're tackling the enormous problem of food waste. You might or might not be aware, but globally, 1/3 of all the food we produce gets thrown away each year. And you might not also be aware that in countries such as the UK, but indeed across much of the Western world, roughly half of all food waste takes place in the home. And so OLIO is solving that problem by connecting people who have food they don't want or need with their neighbours living nearby. So you just snap a photo of your items, add it to the app, your neighbours can request it, they pop round and pick it up. It's as easy as that. We've had 2 million people join us. They've shared 5 million portions of food so far. And women really have been sort of at the heart of OLIO. Myself and my co-founder, Sasha, are both women, and about 3/4 of our user base are women as well.
Amazing, thank you. I could actually spend the time today to speak to each of you individually about your organizations and the work you do, but that's not the brief. As much as I'd like to do that, that's not the brief. So I'm going to kick us off, and I'm going to go back to you first, Tessa, actually. And I was struck by your startup story, and one point in particular that you made on your website around, you know, just because it's a problem doesn't mean people care about it. And it's certainly a challenge to get people to care. So how do we start, or how did you start, and how do you think we can start, you know, as a global community to try and influence things for the better?
Wow, that's a massive question indeed. Yeah, our sort of starting point came from my own personal experience, where I found myself with some food that I didn't want to throw away, and couldn't believe that there wasn't a better solution than the bin. And so that was where I came up with this idea of an app that connects neighbours to each other. At its heart, OLIO is exactly what you're saying. It is about behaviour change, although funnily enough, actually, whilst today a neighbour-to-neighbour food sharing app might sound strange, what we like to point out to people is that human beings have been sharing food for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. It's been a core success feature in terms of how we've evolved as a species. We're very unique in that we share food. And so I think a lot of what we do at OLIO is try and help people kind of tap into that very human instinctive relationship that we have with food. So whilst initially people might come to OLIO and think, oh, this is a bunch of strangers sharing food, what we try and do is help people understand how amazing it feels to give something away to someone who wants it or maybe even needs it. And we recognize that our competitor is the rubbish bin. And so we have to provide a user experience that is 10 times more delightful than the rubbish bin. And so that means kind of really leaning into all the very human stuff. It'll be very hard for us to compete with the bin. It's pretty convenient, it's very pervasive, and also it's quite hidden, i.e. people don't see you using it. So for us, the behavior change piece has to be all around kind of, people often ask, do you lead with the carrot or the stick? And what we've found is that leading with the carrot, so to speak, leading with the positivity around using OLIO, being part of a movement, part of a community that are kind of bringing a better world into being, that is the right approach. And then we do have just a small amount of stick, which is just to kind of try and provide some sort of baseline education for people around just how horrific the level of waste that we have in our society is today.
It's such an amazing idea. I absolutely love it. I've just signed up and started using it, so I haven't managed to put anything up yet, but yeah, but my intentions are there, so we'll get moving.
Well, you'll be amazed at just how strong the demand is, because actually a lot of people kind of think, oh, well, will anyone really want my 2 heads of broccoli or these tins of soup? And we always just say to people, please, please, please add them, because half of all the food added to the app is requested in under 1 hour.
Wow.
So our biggest challenge is actually in just encouraging more people to share.
Right, very good, very good, excellent. Gill, can I just pop back to you for a moment there? I just want to first of all say congratulations. I was reading that you've actually been awarded the Global Women's Business Enterprise of the Year at this year's WeConnect International Gala back in April.
Yeah,
so
well, I didn't quite get the award because they had to cancel it, but I'm sure it'll turn up.
But certainly you're at the forefront of driving change to develop that more sustainable procurement practice that you talked about. Tell me a little bit about the approach your business takes to sustainability and what the biggest challenges are. I mean, I saw some of the organizations that you're involved with, and I mean, it's just, the list goes on in terms of how you're organizing your business. So it'd be lovely to hear a little bit about how you're tackling sustainability. Yes. One step at a time, essentially.
I think a lot of it is about awareness and really understanding, because obviously dealing with procurement, you know, procurement are there, they have to make savings, but there are other things that are just as important as making savings. And so thinking about doing things that are not harmful for the planet and making sure that the people who make products are treated fairly and with respect is key. And I think that it has been a challenging message, I'll be honest, for quite a few years. We started the sustainability piece after the Olympics when we were asked to pitch on this project. And the brief said, we want products that are produced locally from sustainable materials, and we want them to have an end-of-life plan, i.e. how do we break them up and recycle them? And at the end of it, it was like, my God, we should be doing that all the time. So it was a complete wow moment for us, and we changed what we were doing, but it's very, very challenging to do that. But the bit that we find works really well, we sit between the buyers, the procurement teams, or the marketeers, and the factories. And so we think that the pace where we can make the biggest impact is sharing insight up and down the chain. And so we run workshops and sessions within corporate offices to talk about some of the challenges around the world in production, whether that's textiles, all those different areas, so that they really understand some of the issues. And then we talk about some of the really great case studies where clients, corporations are making change. But then we also work with the factories to help them understand how they can do things better. So, and it is very much us helping them, sharing insights and really wanting to make them better, stronger, more productive. And it's fantastic. I love it. And so the more we do, the more we want to do. We just got awarded our B Corp last week, which we're really excited about. So, yeah, so it's a very exciting journey, and we go in and we meet teams who aren't particularly engaged, and at the end of it we can get a real buzz out of the fact that we're helping them to change behaviours throughout the organisation.
Excellent, fantastic, wonderful. I mean, behaviour is certainly a theme, behaviour change is certainly a theme that's emerging from the conversation. And Mamadou, I'm going to hop over to you next, if you don't mind. And one of the things you do is actually bring the social impact vision for Visa alive. Do you actually focus on any SDGs in particular, or is it a more general sustainability approach? How are you and Visa having an impact there?
Yeah, at Visa, you know, it's how we are, two ways that really we approach this. One is through our company, and how do we leverage our core business to have a positive impact in the communities where we work in. And also we also work through our foundation as well. So if you think about really what we do from the company is really, when you think about 1 billion women actually that are unbanked today, and many of them owning businesses, how do you address the root causes that keep them outside of the financial system? So let me just take one example to bring it to life about what Tessa said around food waste. Yes, but if you think about emerging markets, we refer more to food loss. If you think about agriculture, 30% of everything farmers produce every year is lost due to inefficiencies. If you think about over 70% of the workforce being women, and that is about 1/3 of your income being lost just because of inefficiencies. And why? Because they don't have access to basic storage technologies and all of that, which actually can be empowered by access to financing. So so by digitizing value chains and bringing digital payment to these value chains, you enable these farmers and other business actors in the value chain actually to make visible their business transactions and build the data with financial service providers so that they can A, better understand how those segments of the business work, and then B, what are the kind of appropriate financial solutions that they can develop to address that gap. So if you think about it, we at Visa, particularly on our business, is actually really how are we addressing those barriers, including also barriers related to identification, what we call KYC, which is identity. Also barriers related to infrastructure. How can you access digital payment without having to have a bank account? How do we have solutions that actually can allow access to loans and financing for your business and making the repayments more commensurate and consistent with the businesses, the small and micro businesses' cash flows. So those are the kind of innovations that we are driving from our corporate and our business, our core business, to try to address those solutions. But then, of course, through our foundation as well, we look at a long-term investment into women economic empowerment, particularly addressing the gap in financing. It is also comes from information. For instance, Visa runs an annual report that is called the State of Women Entrepreneurship every year, which provides a lot of insights, not only just for Visa, but also all the other actors in the space. For instance, the 2021 report is showing that even in the US, for instance, 76% of women report that they have been more empowered over the past 5 years. 66% of women continue to say that access to finance is a big challenge for them and is a growing challenge. So those insights help us also direct actually the funding and the programs that we have through our foundation to address that gap by addressing the issue of access, control over capital that can flow into empowering the micro and small businesses.
Very good, very good. I mean, there was a lot of intersectionality there across different topics, and I'm hearing sort of I suppose the three main themes that are emerging for me today are around behavior, gender, and climate sustainability piece of it. And I don't know if the panel just would like to comment on that in terms of particularly current, I suppose, in the context of the current Black Lives Matter movement. There's quite a bit of conversation about the intersectionality of race and climate. Do we think the same applies to gender and climate, or gender? Is there other issues that we need to be thinking of?
I'm happy to take a stab at that. Yeah, certainly from my perspective, I think there's massive intersectionality with gender, with race, ethnicity, and also with class and socioeconomic background. And I certainly see it. So I've been a sort of doing this role with OLIO for 5 years now, and have been in the tech for good startup space in that time. And I have been stunned at the diversity that I have seen amongst the founders. I've seen a level of diversity that I never saw in my previous corporate career. And I think the reason for that is because increasingly people, people of color, women, people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, they are disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis. And so they're increasingly not seeing anyone else solving the problem. And so are having to kind of stand up and start solving the problem ourselves. And, but and that's very exciting and very inspiring to see. Where I get sort of quite frustrated is I see this fantastic sort of diversity in that community, but then I see it kind of intersecting with the finance community, which still shows an astounding lack of diversity and a lack of appreciation for these problems that we're trying to solve. And as a result of that, these more diverse founders are not receiving the funding that the world needs them to receive. And that is very frustrating, because we all know that we've got sort of 10 years to take meaningful action to mitigate the worst effects of the climate crisis. And so it's critical that these diverse founders are getting properly backed and properly funded so that we can crack on and solve this problem.
Very good. And Medha, MicroLoan is actually, you know, one of the stated aims to change the face of social investment. How do you decide, and how do you make sure that you're tackling some of the issues there that Tessa has raised?
So a lot of the women that we work with in sub-Saharan Africa, their background is that they have no education, no prior formal business or financial skills training. But this is in no means a barrier to entry into the MicroLoan program. So we have a very robust criteria to assess who joins our program. When we go into a new community, there is a series of induction and training workshops that is done in order to familiarize these women with how MicroLoan works, you know, what the loan program entails, how repayments are made, what the preconditions are. Essentially, we lend to women in groups. So we use the joint liability group model, which means that if we lend to members of a group, like say, consider a 5-member group, each member guarantees the loan of the other member. And so if one member fails to repay, the other 4 will step in so that there is no arrears to the group. And that is essentially our collateral. We do not have any sort of other collateral in place physical, because most of these women that we're working with do not have assets. And by having this sort of robust criteria, we ensure that the women are, you know, we're setting them up for success and not setting them up to fail, because that's a very, very key component of our loan program. And that's how we get women into this. We provide extensive training. For example, you know, we touched upon the climate issue. We have a lot of, I mean, the regions that we work in are agricultural in nature. A lot of these women are smallholder farmers, about 80 to 90%. So at some point of the year, they're dependent on farming income. And these are regions that are prone to drought and famine and floods, disease. So they are the most vulnerable and they take the hit first. So we are consciously looking to design products that suit the needs of these clients. We're providing training in conservation farming to our agricultural clients so that that improves the yields and they're able to reduce food insecurity drastically. They're able to provide 3 meals a day to themselves and their families. But also what that means is, because the yields are increasing, they're left with a surplus that they can then sell on into the market and have an incremental income for the household. So I think with this, it takes time, all of this, but we don't want to take any shortcuts, because I think we want to ensure that it leads to a better outcome, both for the clients as well as us as an organization.
Thank you, Medha. I'm going to actually open up for questions now in a moment, and while you're thinking about your questions and adding them into the chat, and please, if there's a particular speaker that you want to ask a question of, please add that in as well. But in the meantime, just while you're gathering your thoughts and typing in those questions, I'm going to hand back to Mamadou just for a moment, and just to ask for your perspective here, because Visa, potentially one of those big organizations that are being criticized in some of these contexts, and talk a little bit about what criteria you're using and how you're impacting that piece. That would be really interesting.
Okay. No, thank you. I think that we recognize actually the gap for certain categories, particularly the youth. We recognize also women, and particularly women entrepreneurs, and also some also related to race, for instance, in certain areas, Black women as well. So this is why actually our programming is looking at addressing some of those issues. For instance, the kind of partnership we've done with Andy, and which we have launched recently, is particularly looking at how to address gender equality in particular markets. And we have another one also with Women's World Banking, which is looking at economic stability and prosperity for women entrepreneurs. So, and in the US and in Europe, we've launched also more recently recognizing some of the crises that we are looking at today, and how do we respond to that? And we launched these programs called I Fund Women and I Fund Black Women, where you're providing, DISA is going to provide resources that allow them either to start businesses or to consolidate their businesses. But overall also it's looking at how do we support NGOs like MicroLoan Foundation and other NGOs that work with those who are the most vulnerable, the micro businesses, those who are the individual up to 5 employees sort of, to actually withstand and recover from this COVID crisis. And we've particularly focused on those who are most adversely affected, which are women, consciously, because we believe that it is not just a means to an end. It is also an issue of right for them to have access to the means that allows them to actually build their livelihood. So there is a number of different programs that are tailored to specific issues that actually we are supporting, but always focus on micro and small businesses, because in the spirit of not giving a fish, but actually teaching to fish, actually to sustain and contribute to economic growth and create jobs. Yeah.
We're familiar with that model, teaching people to fish, so it's been proven time and time again, and I think it's certainly very, very effective. So thank you, and really interesting the work as Visa is doing. Gill, if I just hop over to you for a moment, you have such a diverse network. Do you see any problems with gender equality across the network that you're working in at the moment?
To be honest, the networks that I'm mainly involved with I'm focusing in on the gender equality, and so we're having lots of conversations. And but I would say in the procurement world, it has really got a bit of space in the last couple of years, where everyone is talking about it and everyone is understanding some of the challenges. And I think access to finance, and there are so many issues, and so for me it's a space I want to be in, and it's not as equal as it should be. So whether you're thinking about the procurement space, or whether I'm thinking about within the factories and down the supply chains, there is a lot of work that needs doing, as we all know, everywhere. So I think it's very much about making sure we're part of spreading that word, driving the awareness to great work, like for example the microloan is incredible, and we've sort of shared that with many of the people in our networks and many of the networks, because I think it's fantastic. So yeah, I think it's very challenging. But the other thing with We Connect International is the fact that the whole piece is around support a woman, because she'll support the village. If you support a woman, she will commit her time and her energy to support others around her, whether that's her children or the community that she lives in. And I think spreading that is really important. People really get that, and I think that's a really good, whatever community you're in, wherever you are in the world, women do give back. And support those around them.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a huge challenge, and yeah, don't envy the task. We have another question from the audience, and I think for all the panelists, so please feel free to jump in. What's your biggest challenge, and what's your one ask for help? that the audience can go away with now and, with an action. So biggest challenge and ask for help that the audience can take away today.
I'm happy to have a crack
Yes,
at that.
thanks.
So our biggest challenge is actually encouraging more people to add more food and also non-food items to the app. So there is no shortage of demand. So half the food added to the app is requested in under an hour. So my big ask to everybody would be twofold. The first would be to download the OLIO app and to declutter your fridge and your toiletries and your kitchen appliances and everything kind of get sharing. My second ask would be that if you work for an organization that is either in the food industry, food retail or events, or even just has a corporate canteen, to please do get in touch with us, because we have a program whereby we have 8,500 food safety trained volunteers who collect and redistribute unsold and unserved food from businesses and ensure that food gets into the homes of the local community. So please do reach out to us to find out more.
Great, thank you.
Shall I go?
Mamadou?
Oh, go on.
Yeah, please.
I'll quickly go. So mine would most definitely be, it's such a challenging time for every charity. And I think everyone needs to be supporting in whatever way they can, doesn't matter how small it is. So if everyone on the call, can share some of what they've heard about MicroLoan today and drive more people to organisations like MicroLoan, that would be fantastic for me, because I think that it is about talking about these things and getting involved, doing a hike, doing something, that you can share and help in different communities around the world.
Oh, thank you. Mamadou,
Yeah. Yes. What I will add, you earlier mentioned about SDGs, and I want to bring here more about also the importance of SDG 17, which is really about partnership, how we work with others to make sure that we are amplifying our impact and reaching to places and to communities probably that alone we would not be able to reach with such effectiveness. And I think that also the addition is really about really sharing insights and best practice, because that allows us always to bring much more appropriate solutions to people that we are serving. So yeah.
Very good. Medha, I'm going to leave you till the end on the call of action for MicroLoan, because you're our host and I think you have a special call of action for us all. But I do have another question from the attendees, which I'd like to bring in, and it's very topical and very current. And it's really, how do the panelists think COVID-19 will affect the progress of sustainability and gender equality in the short and medium, even long term?
Yeah, I think, COVID-19 has been a real shock to all of us. It's a shock to the system. I was saying to one of the investors that we were talking to that even in our worst case scenario planning, nobody would have thought of this event. And so you have a base case, medium case, and a worst case, and this does not show up. So it's affected us all in multiple levels, because it's affected our funding sources in the UK. It's affected our operations significantly in Africa. There's a lot of uncertainty. We already work in very vulnerable, poor countries that do not have the bandwidth to withstand such shocks. And it makes it even harder to do the work that we do. But that doesn't mean that we're not up for the challenge, I think, to stay relevant. And we are even more determined to serve these women, because they are affected in a way that is very different to how we see it here in the Western countries. So it's, I think the uncertainty brings with it a lot of challenges, but I think, like I said, it's all the more reason for us to, have a cohesive framework of action in these countries. Mamadou talked about partnership. It's really about working with all our partners to ensure that we're able to withstand these shocks as a team and provide the most appropriate services to our clients. Flexibility is a key takeaway in all of this, because the more flexible you are in your approach to clients, you're understanding their needs, they're vulnerable, and you're able to tailor you tailor your services to meet their needs closely, I think that is what will set us apart from the run-of-the-mill banks and other financial institutions. So I think that's very, very essential at this point in time.
Very good, very good. Thank you. Anyone else want to weigh in on that particular question around?
Yeah, I'm happy to. When COVID first hit, I was extremely concerned for the climate crisis movement, because prior to COVID, it did feel like the world was finally waking up to the climate crisis, and that 2020 was going to be the year when we transitioned from talk into action. And I was very concerned that essentially the movement was going to be derailed by COVID, because that was the only thing, and quite rightly so, that we were all focusing on. I'm now actually feeling a lot more optimistic, and there's a couple of reasons for that. So the first is that COVID has demonstrated what we can achieve when we think we are truly facing a crisis. So things, it is inconceivable that half the world would have been locked up in their homes a couple of months ago, and equally, for many years, we'd all been told that the problem of rough sleeping, for example, in the UK, was an unsolvable problem. And yet, miraculously, within the space of a week, I'm sure it hasn't been completely solved, but wow, kind of probably got about 90% of the way there. And I think also we can see that the government can spend when it needs to. There does appear to be a magic money tree, after all. So that for me is quite exciting, because it demonstrates what we can do when we think we're in a crisis. But obviously what it shows also is that to date, we have not believed that we are yet in a crisis. The other thing that gives me hope is that we've sort of pressed pause on all of our activities and behaviors, and we now have a chance to rebuild the society in the future that we want. And I am hopeful that there are enough people demanding that we rebuild a more equitable, a more sustainable world, and that we will seize this opportunity. And I can definitely see an outcome where COVID has accelerated the progress of the sustainability movement and the movement tackling inequality, because we have had this opportunity to kind of reset, almost sort of release the shackles of the status quo, and sort of imagine what we really want for our new future.
Absolutely. I think there's a growing narrative around that, around this has been our pause and now can we do things differently. And one of the things I've been thinking about there, as you've been speaking, Tessa and Medha, is the role technology plays. And I know, Mamadou, you talked about, technology with the visa and how we use there, and Tessa, you developed the app. For the panelists, and again, a question from the audience here, what role does technology play in achieving the SDGs, specifically those around gender equality?
Yeah, maybe I can add just a bit around this COVID, and how we're using technology around that. First of all, one of the things we saw and we heard, really focusing, of course, on our micro and small businesses, is actually the high pressure around cash, because confinement has reduced sales and all of that. So the idea was actually, what can we build in the progressive moment of the confinement, how to bring these up to back to business. So a number of campaigns digitally enabled that we have launched. One of them is a back to business campaign. So basically, for all those businesses that have been closed during the confinement and that are coming back, how do we make sure that their consumers and potential other consumers who are looking for those kinds of services know that these businesses are reopened and available, so that to grow more sales. The other one is around Where You Shop Matters, which is also about how do you encourage consumers actually to shop more locally and support micro and small businesses that are around them, and also in a way that doesn't make them more exposed, right, to contamination and all of that. But really also over long term is some of you might have seen our announcement from our foundation of $10 million package for COVID response over the next 5 years, recognizing 2 stages at least around that, which was, first of all, how do we infuse the badly needed cash to NGOs that support the SMEs so that they can maintain the services they were providing and not have them discontinued. That's number one. But number 2 is recognizing also that the impacts of this crisis is going to be protracted, and many of the impacts are things that we have not yet seen. So in that context, how do you have a long-term view in terms of really building in the coming months and years those types of programs that actually build stronger resilience for these micro and small businesses and the organizations that support them, like in the spirits that my co-panelists actually have talked about, not doing business as usual, but as you build that resilience, understand some of the lessons learned and come up also with novel solutions that make this effective. Thank you.
Yes, extremely, very, very relevant, absolutely. Gill, in terms of your organization and your network, I mean, technology as an enabler, particularly to help us with gender, is that something that's on your radar at all, or can you see any opportunities there?
The only technology we use is we have a technology app that we use with our charity clients for donations. Yeah, so we're not really that involved with any technology on the other side of that at the moment, although we're always keen to collaborate with other people. So clever people in tech, Tessa. So yeah, so it's not really our space at the moment. I just think that what's come out of this is that everyone can see how easy it is to communicate, share, and engage with people in all over the place so simply by events like this, which is fantastic, and of course very sustainable because none of us have gone anywhere. So for me, that technology is amazing, and I think that will continue to support driving awareness for all sorts of great causes and things. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to sort of start to wrap up a little bit, but I'm going to ask each of the panelists just for their closing thoughts. I might just hop back to Tessa, please, if you don't mind. I keep landing on you, Tessa, to kick off these conversations, but if you wouldn't mind, maybe just some closing remarks, and then finally I'll hand back to Medha just to wrap up and bring us that call for action that MicroLoan is looking for us to do. So Tessa, yeah, maybe some closing comments or remarks, observations.
Well, I think my closing observation would be to pick up on the previous question, which is around the role and potential for technology in solving our climate crisis and also gender inequality. I think technology has an absolutely critical role to play in 3 main areas in terms of providing access to education, access to healthcare, and access to your local community. And when technology does all of those 3 things, it is going to empower women, and once we empower women, then we stand a fighting chance of solving the largest problem facing humanity today, which is our climate crisis. So I think that sort of technology marrying together women and all of those areas will be absolutely critical for the next decade or so.
Fantastic. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Education, a big topic for us here in Salesforce as an enabler as well. So completely relate to that. Mamadou, your closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that I will just come back to really saying that it's important to support micro and small businesses because of what they represent. We all know the numbers, right? 90% of all businesses, providing up to more than half of GDP in emerging markets and providing over 60% of all employment. So this is very important. And women are business owners, but they are not accessing resources they need, particularly financing, to be able to thrive and contribute to community as appropriate. So how do we also purposefully continue to support them, bringing solutions that are tailored to their needs? And for that, it takes a community to really share the experiences and support organizations like MicroLoan Foundation and others like that provide those the vital support that they need in places that many of our organizations cannot get to.
Okay, thank you. And Gill, any final thoughts there for you?
Yeah, the education one for me is key. 262 million children who don't get education. We've got to change that. And technology is amazing. Can we get that technology in other markets which are absolutely desperately needing it? And how can we help that investment and help that to happen? And keep doing great work, MicroLoan. It's really great to be engaged with you, and really impressed with what you're doing. And I think as a woman-owned business in Europe, you know, I think it can be pretty tough. Tessa, I'm sure you will agree, we have bad days. And so imagining what it's like for some of these women around the world, it's really important, vital what you're doing, and glad to be part of your supporting you.
Thank you. Medha, so I'm going to leave you with the big question, I suppose. What's your biggest challenge, and what's the one ask for the audience that we can go and action now? And then, of course, your closing comments, please.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. I think the biggest challenge that we have right now, you know, speaking from the context of MicroLoan, is the markets that we work in. We are working in some of the poorest, most vulnerable regions in the world. These are people who don't have, you know, the women that we work with are, you know, do not have access to education, access to finance and employment. We see huge levels of gender inequality, and that problem persists. Africa is often talked about as the next big growth story. And we are also talking about SDG, you know, the goals being achieved by 2030. If we do not make a serious dent on gender inequality, then I think that goal is going to, you know, not be within reach for a very long time. So I think the challenge is we work in difficult markets, and you know, that's what it is, but that's why it makes our vision and mission so relevant today. And we really want to work with partners who can accelerate or help accelerate this process in achieving those bigger, broader goals. So yeah, that's in terms of the challenges and the opportunities we see. But I'd also now like to say a very big thank you to all my fellow panelists, Gill, Tessa, Mamadou, and to Terri for moderating the session today. You've all taken time out of your busy schedules to be here with us, and I'm very grateful for that. I also want to thank the rest of the audience for joining us today. It is, you know, because of your generosity that we at MicroLoan are able to continue to provide, you know, very crucial services to clients, and I'm very grateful for that too. I mentioned earlier, in terms of a statistic, in 2019 alone, we helped over 82,000 women take their first steps out of poverty, and our ambition is to support over 1 million lives a year. So this is a big, bold ambition, but with the help of you know, your support and other partners, we think that's very much within reach. Today alone, we managed to raise an amazing £7,510. That translates to 626 women being empowered and beginning to start their journeys out of poverty. So thank you everyone for purchasing a ticket. Each ticket was sold at a price tag of £12. That is the cost of providing one woman with agricultural training that she needs to start a small farming business to feed her family. Of course, now raising this amount would have not been possible without the help of our very generous corporate supporters. I think we have Terri here from UK Salesforce, who's moderated the session. And also we have Tabitha from Smith & Williamson. Both of them provided extremely generous donations in support of this event. Salesforce UK is a leading global software organization which brings companies and customers together through one integrated CRM platform. Sustainability and equality are core values of Salesforce, which is why they are proud to be supporting MicroLoan Foundation today. Smith & Williamson work with entrepreneurs and management teams at every stage of the business lifecycle. The unique one-stop shop of professional services has been developed to meet the personal, financial, and business needs of founders, management teams, and investors. and they have a specific focus on female entrepreneurs, which is why they've supported MicroLoan Foundation too. So thank you to Salesforce UK and Smith & Williamson once again. And for the rest of the audience, I mean, if you've been inspired by what you've heard today, please, you can continue to support by giving a single or monthly donation to MicroLoan Foundation. My colleague Hayden has posted a link on the chat section, so please feel free to click on the link. It'll take you to the donation page where you can make a contribution. And we look forward to continuing our journey with all of you. Thank you very much.